Ndewonu. Today I want to talk about the 7 steps to finding the perfect Igbo name for your child. If you're looking for a perfect name for your child, that alone can be a challenge. But if you're looking for an Igbo name, it is even more so. Because there are many names to choose from, and all of them have a special meaning. And if you're living in a mixed cultured marriage like myself, it is even harder to agree on a name. Because not only do you have to consider the pronunciation, but also how people will understand it in different parts of the world and how they will pronounce it. So how did Ezenwa and I find our perfect Igbo name? Here are the 7 steps to consider. First thing to do is to clarify. While it might be obvious for the Igbo parent that their child should get an Igbo name, it mustn't be for the non-Igbo parent. To me, it was always clear that my kids should answer an Igbo name because I feel that it connects them more to their other part, especially since they're growing up here in Switzerland. But it might not be for everybody. So first thing you should do is clarify with your partner whether or not your child should answer an Igbo name. And get ready for some discussions, because this might be the first challenge to overcome. The second thing you need to do is to prioritize. You may be aware that a lot of Igbo people answer an Igbo and an English name. So once you agree to give your child an Igbo name, you need to discuss whether or not your child gets an English name as well. And if you agree on that, the question is, which name comes first? A lot of people in the diaspora, but also in Nigeria today, answer their English name first, which I find is a pity. Ezenwa, for example, has been answering his English name Kenneth here in Switzerland for a long time, because he felt it was too difficult for people to pronounce his Igbo name Chijoke. I wanted my kids to answer their Igbo name first, so we didn't have anything to discuss at this point. But if you disagree, that's your second question to answer. Step number 3, define your criteria. Obviously, every person has different criteria when judging if names are suitable or not. To me, it helped to clarify those criteria before going through the endless list of Igbo names available on the internet. So here are my 4 criteria. The first criteria to me was the sound. I pay a lot of attention to the way a name sounds. And I checked all the lists, pronouncing the names the way I would from reading, which obviously was wrong many times. But I felt that was the first criteria for me, that people were able to read the name and somehow be close to pronouncing it. My second criteria was the length. In Switzerland, we like to abbreviate long names. So I either wanted to have a short Igbo name or a name that could be abbreviated. And there are not many short Igbo names, so I did the latter. I checked whether or not the name could be easily abbreviated. I have done that for my first 3 kids. So Chijoke can be shortened to Chicho, Uchenna can be shortened to Uche, and Ziora is short enough, so Ziora is perfectly fine. The third criteria for me was the meaning. It's so beautiful how every Igbo name has a meaning. But if you're giving a name, obviously you want the name to be suitable for your child, and you have to consider the meaning. So that's number 3. My 4th criteria is context. And I think I have to outline that a little bit. Context to me is, for example, if your neighbor, your in-law, and your uncle answer the name Obinna, you might not want your child to answer that name as well, just because it's already so omnipresent in your life. Also to context for me was the discussion about the age of a name. For example, in the olden days in Ala Igbo, they used to give kids the name according to the market days. So Mbweke for a child that was born on Eke Day, or Mborie for a child that was born on Orie Day. And if you'd give your child the name Mbweke today, a lot of people in Igbo land would be frowning their face probably and thinking, why are you giving your name such an ancient name? So that's also part of the consideration. We have those names also in Switzerland, right? Like Hantueli or Sepp. Very outdated names. You can still choose them, but you have to understand the context before you go for it. The 4th and most obvious step was the research. Thank God for the internet. There are so many lists with Igbo names and their meanings available, and I have listed them right here in the comment section. I wasted a lot of time going through these lists, but I kind of made it my sleeping routine. So before I fall asleep, I go through the lists and I write down all the names that I liked, because that's an important step for the next one. Step number 5, the magic 5. Once you have the list of the names you like for your child to have, it is time to reduce that list, because obviously your child cannot answer all of the 20 or 50 names you wrote down. The first time I did this exercise of reduction, I reduced my list only to 20 names, which turned out to be a big challenge, because then to reduce from 20 to 1 is even worse when you're discussing it with your partner. I suggest you reduce your list to your best 5 and take that list for the next step. Step number 6 is the most fun but also most challenging part: elimination. What you do is you bring your 5 names, your partner brings his 5 names, and you go through each other's list and cross out any name you don't like. The rule is you have to leave at least 1. That was a fun exercise. Ezenwa was very fast to cross out my suggestions of the asso, which I really liked. And I was very fast to cross out some of his choices as well that I felt were unpronounceable in Switzerland, or that could be abused, because if you shorten them, they mean something else in Swiss German. Once we had our 2 or 3 names down, it was time to discuss which ones to choose, and that might take a few days. You process, you go over it, and you discuss. And this time we even came to the conclusion that we liked 2 of our Igbo names so much that we will go for them. So our last born is not answering an English name, he's answering 2 Igbo names now, which I find is great. But it must not be that way. Of course, you can go for an English and an Igbo name, vice versa. So now we are down to that one. It's time for the next step. Step number 7, practice, practice, practice. For a non-Igbo person, it will most probably always be a challenge to pronounce an Igbo name, no matter which one you choose. Therefore, it's very important that you as a non-Igbo parent practice the pronunciation, learn the meaning, and anytime somebody asks you for the name of your child, you say it out with pride and explain the pronunciation and the meaning. Also, we did that with our kids. They learn how to spell their name from a very young age. So anytime somebody struggled with it, they could help the person spell it out and explain the meaning. Last but not least, I want to say that finding a name for a child always seems like such a huge task. A name is existing before a child is born and will most probably outlast the child's life. Therefore, we feel it's so important to make a good choice when choosing a name for our child. On the other hand, a name is just like the frame of an artwork, right? It's not the name that defines the person. It's the person that will give value to the name. And like we do here, we give 2 names. A child can always choose which name it wants to answer, the first or the second one, when it's older and maybe it doesn't like one name at all. I just want to encourage you to be open-minded and find consensus with your partner, to find a compromise or a name that you both like, and then be confident about it. Even if people struggle with the pronunciation, it's just because you're in a different country, right? If you go to Ala Igbo, everybody will be able to pronounce that name. And if you choose a Swiss name, for example, it's obvious that in Ala Igbo, they will struggle to pronounce it. So we have to get over that, right? Our kids are half Igbo, half Swiss. They have to have an Igbo name, in our opinion. So we just go with it and we explain to people with pride that that's an Igbo name, it has a meaning, and this is how it is pronounced. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that you will find the perfect Igbo name for your child. Share it in the comment section. I'll be looking forward to hear how you managed to do that. Ngwan, godino. The third criteria was My number 4